Hello and welcome to the Thinking in Tech podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts, Dylan, and I'm here with my other co-host, Baz. Welcome to the podcast.
Howdy.
So, if you're not familiar with this podcast, this is Thinking in Tech, and we are a podcast of basically just two guys that work in tech that like talking about tech. So let's get started. Yeah, we have a great show today. As far as talking about what's been going on recently in tech, we're gonna do a deep dive into what's been going on at Xbox, and ev- you know, all the change up that's been happening there lately, all the drama involved there. And also, after that discussion with that, we'll be having on a special guest, Lou Franco. He's author of Swimming in Tech Debt, Practical Techniques to Keep Your Team from Drowning in Its Codebase. We're both good friends with Lou and know him for years. He's a great guy, and that'd be a great first guest for our show. And yeah, he'll share some of his background and talk to us about his book some. So, first, I guess we'll go right into the news. We'll be talking about some of the big change ups in leadership at Xbox and just some of the uncertainty of their future. I guess, I can give a quick overview of what's happening. I think just like last week or so, basically the CEO of Xbox, like dramatically just went away, retired. And he's like, "Hey, Monday's my last day." A guy that's been there since the very beginning. It was really unexpected, and just from like a gamer point of view, this was like a big, shocking, unexpected thing. Um, yeah, I don't. Did you hear about this when it happened, Boz, or do you know anything about it?
Yeah, it was bouncing around the news for a bit. It's kind of unusual. Usually, these big companies have a pretty clear idea about succession plans, especially for a unit as prominent, I think, as Xbox is to Microsoft. So the the news was that the CEO resigned, and then the person that they had expected to lead after that CEO left also resigned. Um, and so that raised my eyebrows some because that's not typically how it's done. They like to manage these things.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
And so
trying.
who ended up taking that role?
Let's see. The new CEO of Microsoft Gaming will be Asha Sharma. And she was currently the president of Microsoft's core AI product. So, what a lot of people are, it was just all really shocking because, with Phil Spencer, he had been with Microsoft since 1988. He joined as an intern, and then he was with Xbox since the very beginning of 2001. And he's always just, been like a friendly face almost, almost like the customers face to Xbox. He's always been that kind of
Okay.
guy. And I think like in 2014 or so, he became the CEO, and he's been there forever. And it's the 25th anniversary of Xbox this year, like starting this year. So it's one of those things like if he kind of decide to leave on his own terms and he was just kind of ready to go, you think he would have seen the rest of the big celebration to the end, right? The 25th anniversary. But it seems like his retirement was sped up by
You're right.
people higher up. And I'm trying to remember her name. I wish I wrote it down here. Okay, it is Sarah Bond. I want to make sure I got the name right. But Sarah Bond was almost like a president of, basically one level right below Phil Spencer. And she was basically, anytime they had media events where they announced, new games or new initiatives or ideas, she was right next to him. So it was kind of almost seemed as like she was his apprentice and she was going to be the one that would take over after he left. But at the same time the news came out that he was retiring, she resigned from her role. So she just left. She was just gone. So very, very dramatic. And then they have a new AI person come in and just that, the gamers, because it's kind of thing with gaming a lot like Nintendo has like Shigeru Miyamoto and had the Reggie guy for the longest time. They almost make a connection with the people behind the scenes with the gamers and kind of get that relationship. So these gamers have these relationships with these people at these companies, and then for them just to completely disappear without any kind of fanfare or any kind of celebrations, it's very dramatic.
Yeah, it's very interesting also the person they picked to
Mhm.
fill the role being someone who was recently chief of core AI. I'm not entirely clear on what that role was at Microsoft, but um, it's been readily apparent. I mean, they've been talking about it explicitly, but it's also showing up in all other products. Microsoft is obviously hammering their uh, company internally. We need AI in everything, everywhere, like right now.
Mhm.
Um, and so this sequence of events uh, feels like now I'm just an observer. I don't have any you know uh, actual inside knowledge of any of this stuff, but this just feels like there was resistance, perhaps, to this AI push, and the people that didn't want to do it that way are not there anymore, and the person that they brought in to lead the group was an AI, advocate. So uh, I don't think these are. Um, I think these things are related quite closely, probably.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
see this very broadly in the industry too, the tech industry. Every major tech company is the same, right? We need AI everywhere yesterday, and whether it makes sense or not, to have it, it's bad enough that Microsoft has advertising popping up on your Windows 11 experience now. Like, uh, it's just distracting and unproductive in my book. But now they're going to layer on this AI. There's going to be AI in every program. I guess in like even in Notepad, they decided to put AI features into Notepad. Like it's just for grocery lists, guys.
Right. And it's like, they're just like, how can we make it seem valuable to investors and just put AI in it, right? And obviously, this is just, we don't know anything. We're all seeing this on the outside as everyone else. It's speculation, but this is the general appearance of what it looks like to everyone on the outside world. Because if these guys that have been a part of building Xbox since its creation feel like they have an understanding of what makes a video game, and what video gamers are looking for, what they appreciate, what they like and they don't like, and if they're being given direct orders that they know will contradict with that, then you just kind of leave.
Right. Well, there was a quote in here from the new CEO. Um, I think is that right?
Let's see. Did I put? Yeah, I have some just notes down here, and we have a quote that she said. There was an interesting interview that happened right after this with the original creator of Xbox, who's not currently at Microsoft anymore, but he did an interview with, GamesBeat, and they were asking, "What do you think about all this change?" Because for a lot of people, so maybe just give a little bit more background on it. It was kind of unclear what the future of Xbox was already before this. They seem to really kind of have a hard time finding what they want their paths to be. So traditionally, Xbox comes out in 2001, and Xbox 360 comes out in 2005, I believe, and it's a video game console. You buy that console, there's video games like Halo or Forza or other Xbox made games that only come out on those console. And then around 2014, Xbox was, with the 360, that was the big video game experience. That was the winner of that video game generation. Most mainstream way people played video games was on the Xbox 360. So they had like what you might call the sequel to the console that came out, I believe 2013, 2014, which was, and they also had terrible namings. I might even be getting this wrong, but I think it was the Xbox One they called it. So that was, that kind of just kind of showed where they started
Normal,
going astray
yeah,
with just the
normal
bad names.
Microsoft naming nonsense.
And then like they really tried advertising that as like a whole home media platform. Like,
Mhm.
this can also be your cable box, which was terrible timing because that's when the rise of Netflix happened.
Right.
They're like, this can be your movie player, and they're like, it also plays video games. But they were almost moving away from that focus of video games. They had that like Connect motion controller thing, which was supposed to be like an interface for using entertainment, which never really caught on. Almost similar to how VR the last couple of years that hasn't really been adapted the way people wanted it to be adapted. So
Mhm.
they went from that, they're like, "Okay, that didn't really work. Let's focus on the games again." And then they go into, they try having new games. Was it's not is it Gamecast? I think it's Gamecast, but it's basically their gaming as a subscription service, which they did huge pushes for. They, pay people to get their games that would traditionally cost $67 on day one. They're like, let's have people pay $5, $10 a month to get these games on day one. And then there's been, that's been getting more expensive the last few years.
Hmm.
Prices raised for that. And then like it seems like not as many games are going on to there. So there's just been a general sense of that wasn't profitable or successful. And it's like, okay, that's maybe another miss from Xbox. And then in the last few years, I think the last like big kind of campaign they had was like everything's Xbox now. You don't have to have an Xbox console to be Xbox. Almost like they still make the console, but now they're releasing everything on PC, which is where they started. And then they started releasing things on PlayStation. Like you can play Halo on PlayStation now, which 10 years ago, if you told someone that, they wouldn't believe you. And then it's just like it it seems like these moves they've been making hasn't been successful for them. So
Hmm.
people are already like, okay, is Xbox okay? How is Xbox doing? And then just to you're kind of already like kind of questioning what's their future. A big dramatic shift in leadership like this, or like, is there
Right.
even a future to Xbox, or is this kind of like the dwindling down of it?
This whole field is interesting to me. You're growing up, was the beginning of the video game revolution, as we discussed in our last episode, which you should totally go check out.
Absolutely.
After this one, you can
Yes.
binge watch our podcast. Um, um, it was interesting watching the progression of that, right? So there were the arcade consoles, the big stand-ups. That was it. And then there was some success moving video gaming into the home, right? On the TV, the Atari 2600 kind of established to that. And then there was a huge competitive surge in that. And then gaming really kind of started moving to consoles with the NES. And the NES was really the most successful one. A lot of the other ones that were around at the time just, you know, blew up and went away. I'd say, the industry goes through phases, but I think there also like a change in the way people consume entertainment, right? Like, how does the fact that everyone's mobile now play
Exactly.
play into this? Do people who don't have my seasoning like to plant themselves in front of a TV, right, for
Ye-
hours on time, or do they like to play games on the go?
that's absolutely true, and that seems like something that traditionally you plant yourself in front of the TV. You have these video game consoles that you connect your TV and you sit on a couch. But for like, the Gen Z generation, the one that's like kind of right below me, that might be kind of weird for them. So now, Xbox and other video game makers are competing with, these entertainment devices that, most people have in their pocket and they're just always, that's kind of their go-to. They're like, my brain wants to be entertained. Let me pull out the phone in my pocket. They're not like, okay, let me go set up the TV, sit down on the couch, turn on the TV, turn on, console. And then you have to update the console if you haven't used it, in a while. That's like, or every video game you have to update. You have to update the controller. So there's so much, I don't know. It's like, and I feel like I don't even see like it's not like the games are necessarily moving to the phone. It's just people are choosing different activities maybe that are just more convenient and accessible to them. But I
Yeah,
could also see like, the Nintendo Switch and even the
right.
Switch 2 that came out last year. That's really successful. And maybe that's because it gives you the option to have that format of you can do
Yeah,
it traditionally on the TV, or if you just want to take it, with you. And I know a lot of times when I get my video game time playing in it, it's half an hour before bed. I have my Nintendo Switch, which I've been using a lot more lately. So,
right.
and that's probably why Xbox is like anything can be an Xbox, but I don't, maybe they just need to have that handheld like Nintendo has to be successful in that way. But, if you're the leadership at Microsoft above Xbox, you see them, oh, well, we tried this thing, it wasn't successful. We tried this thing, it wasn't successful. Can we launch this very expensive new handheld thing? Like, they're like, "Well, do we really wanna try something else that might not work?"
Y Yeah. Companies like Microsoft face an interesting challenge, which is that in order um, for their shareholders to care and in order to move their stock price, um, anything they do has to be gigantic, right? Has to be multi billions of dollars. There was an interesting example with Microsoft in 2020, maybe early 2021. They bought a company called MetaSwitch, which was from the telecommunications field. So it was basically a big box, um, and it was what smaller telephone companies would use to route telephone calls. And uh, Microsoft owned that for a few years. And even though that company was probably doing, you know, upwards, heading towards $100 million in annual revenue, I think, at the time when Microsoft bought them, uh, they couldn't figure out how to make it a $1 billion business, and so they sold it off, for scrap. uh, and so growth, if you can't generate the growth, um, they they tend not to be interested. So it'll be interesting to see what they think they can do with the property with this AI leader, uh, who said something like, maybe it wasn't in your notes, maybe I saw it online
I did
somewhere.
find it. I
Oh, you did?
could have
Okay.
organized them a little better, and I can go to that. But I think what you're saying is exactly true, and that is kind of the root of a lot of the anxiety of Xbox fans or even just gamers in general. That know the gaming community is better with striving Xbox to be like, what's going to happen with it? Because like you said, these companies like Microsoft, they want these big projects that make a lot of money, and if you see Xbox, it doesn't seem like they've been doing that lately. Like, what's their fate going to be? So to get to that quote first, so this goes back to the interview that GamesBeat had with the original creator of Xbox. And I will say another quote that his this kind of big quote from the article that really kind of blew up around the internet was he said that he believes the new CEO, her job is going to be as a palliative care doctor who slides Xbox gently into the night. So
So
the original creator of Xbox sees this person coming in this new role, and he's like, okay, this person's job is to put Xbox to bed and let it die forever. The report at GamesBeat was talking about a quote she said. He was like, I wonder, because when she came in, she, says all the right things, right? They're like, we're going to do gamers justice. We're going to make great games. We're going to have Xbox be great. And, the report at GameSpeed is like, do we take that for face value or take it in some other way? She said, we're not going to do AI slop, quote unquote. It's still about great games and all that. And the Xbox creator, Blackley, said, A, you want to believe that. B, that's what every single person who's been brought into games from other industries has said when they're hired. In every press release, probably going back longer than you or I have been in business. Then he goes on to say, he knows of an example from when someone was brought in from a sporting goods company into the game developer EA and publisher. Similar situation. But he says that's just what occurs when to people to say when they bring in someone from an outside business into games. Some people coming in from outside businesses succeed in games, and others just hit the wall because it's a content business, and they don't expect it to be a content business. They're not ready for that. They think it's a compute business, or they think it's a rendering business, or they think it's a software business. But games are none of these things, and it's funny. It's none of these things. He says in this article. He says the statement that was written for her in the press release, saying that she was looking forward to seeing what makes games work or something like that, is funny because it reminds
wouldn't
him
you
of the
want
meme.
somebody who already knows what makes games work to run your video game?
Exactly. And
So
his example, go ahead. Yeah.
this feels like to me, okay, in the 80s, Apple was going through kind of a crisis, actually, which persisted from around 85 to 98, before Steve Jobs came back to Apple in 98. Um, they hired this guy, John Scully, who had previously been the CEO of Pepsi, right? So the board of Apple had decided in their infinite wisdom that selling computers was the same as selling, you know, soda. Um, well, it's not. And it was one disaster after another. They eventually brought in some tech people, and they didn't do much better. But there's a conceit, I think, which is, and I've heard this, and there's this whole schools of management that believe firmly, and there may be some truth to it, but they believe firmly that we can train someone to manage anything, right? We'll teach them to be a good manager, and then they can manage any business in the world and be successful at it. And I've never bought into that because I've always felt like, um, well, if you're going to ask people to do it, work for you, which is what a CEO does, right? Shouldn't you understand what they're doing, right? Shouldn't
You would
they?
think, yeah.
Shouldn't you need to know? Because if I just ask you to do something, right? Let's say I'm the CEO of Pepsi. Well, wouldn't that be nice? But let's say I'm the CEO of Pepsi, and I'm coming in and I'm saying, Dylan, I need you to write an XYZ. And I have no idea that XYZ is like completely impossible, right? Or completely out of tune with what customers want. I
Right.
have no idea. I don't have any experience how do you see? It's this mechanistic view, I think, of uh, running a business. I think the example Steve Jobs showed us is that there's a success, there's a huge amount of inspiration and spirit in it that isn't something that you can teach somebody necessarily, right? Easily. Um, it's passion. It's in relentless focus on quality, and it's really being good at listening. Now, okay, I suppose you could abstract these and say we can teach anyone to do these things, right? But the history of business is that some people got that and some people don't. Yeah, if you've got a static, steady state business, yeah, you can bring in a manager to just keep the gears turning. But it took somebody with Steve Jobs' vision to turn Apple around. They were probably close to going out of business.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did that work out for Apple? They were very close to not existing anymore until that original creative force
Right.
came back and kind of reverted it and fixed, the
I mean, it
issues that were
wasn't it
created.
wasn't even the same company, right? There was kind of the original Apple, and then there was this whatever this corporatized monstrosity was that kept producing horrible products. Uh, and then, Steve Jobs came back from his, 10 years in the wilderness and said, well, now I know what I'm doing. And I think he had the confidence to know that um, he didn't need to let other people tell him what to do or how to do his job. Uh, so I don't know. I think the choice does smell a lot like, I don't know what video games are, but we're going to AI the heck out of them
Yeah, and
and somehow make money.
that's a worrying
And I don't
sign. And
mean anything negative about this lady. I'm sure
yeah, for
she's
all we
smart
know,
and
she could do an
talented,
amazing job and be
and
exactly
and
what
maybe
Xbox
so.
needs.
But I haven't heard any vision yet. Um,
Hmm.
I think even if you do bring in somebody from the outside to fill a role, normally you're prepared, right? Before you put them in the role, you ask them, "What's your vision for this?" Right? What are you going to do so that you can present that to the public
Yeah.
and
How
reassure
quickly was it
people.
decided that she was going to take over this role from when it's decided the current people had to go? And how
I
much time did she have to prepare to be in this new role?
Probably, from the sound of it, not much, if
Yeah.
any. It was fairly quick. I was curious. How do you think platforms like Steam are
Hmm.
affecting the video game business? Because I've seen a lot of talk about Steam. One of my projects is this Apple II emulator, and I rely on a lower level library called SDL to do all of the low level video, audio kind of manipulation so that it works across multiple platforms, right? You can run it on Mac, PC, Linux, Android, iPhone, right? You can write once, target lots of different platforms, and um, those there's a like a Discord for that, and those guys are constantly talking about Steam this, Steam that.
Yeah.
Um, Steam seems to have been making some big inroads lately.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
you
I
can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say it goes as far as Steam is PC gaming. Like that is where you go to buy games for PC and play PC games. Now there's other like, it's like I guess what they call a launcher is now it's where you go and you purchase the games and then you open them from Steam and you download them from Steam. And there's other they were really the first to do it. And they're also, they were founded by Gabe Newell, I think that's how you say his name, which was originally Microsoft, like original OG Microsoft, like first 50 employees or so.
Oh, okay.
And he started Steam at the point when people are still, they go to the store and they buy PC games on disc in a box,
Oh,
have
okay.
the DVD drive and put them in. So like when he started that, people were like, why would I want to download a game? It's almost like the Netflix thing, like an
Yeah.
earlier, like around that same time, but for video games to specifically
Okay.
for PC. And they just got that early market share and they just did it right. And they also had, they made games themselves. So if you're familiar with like Half-Life 2 or Portal,
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
games, they are also the developers for those games. Not only did
Oh,
they have
interesting. Okay.
really high quality games, so they're like, this is where you play them, download them, and then they have other third party publishers come in and publish,
Right.
and they just have
Well, and
completely captured the
and
PC
anybody
market.
can publish games on Steam, right? So they've
That's
sort of
pretty much,
it's
yeah.
sort of would it be accurate to say sort of like social media for gaming, in the sense that like I could sit down and write a game in 3 or 6 months and
Yeah.
publish it through Steam, right?
Definitely a lot more like community and accessible aspect to it like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more choices now from a game, a gamer's perspective is a lot more choice than just like the 3 or 4 ones that would be released by a publisher like Microsoft. And I think it kind of like coordinated with, as people were spending less time away from the TV, maybe, especially during COVID, like 2020, building your own PC got really popular, even like a mainstream audience. And you build a PC, you play games on, you're gonna focus on Steam and use Steam in that way.
Right.
So those
And
things
people
have
are using that a lot on Linux as well
for
and Mac, right?
Steam. Yeah, yeah, it's on
Steam.
Linux, it's on Mac. So
Yeah.
for people who care enough about wanting to play a game on like a dedicated system, they're like, I'll build my own system for it almost. And you like that's because there used to be a really big problem like in the early 2000s and even like the early 2010s. It was people didn't know how to build their own computer, and even getting a game to run on a computer was difficult. So the console really served a great purpose of being like, you plug it in, you put the game in, you play it, you're good to go. But
There
in
was
the
there was
last
a consistent hardware platform that developers could target,
that too,
right?
yep, yep,
There were a million different brands of video cards with different capabilities.
hmm,
Buying a game, running it would work great on one, but not so great on another, right?
yep. So yeah, it's
So,
just like in the
mhm,
last 10 or 15 years, I think from Steam's perspective of being that curator of, putting games on, saying your games have to run within this range for the most possible people, developers have adapted to that. So it's easier to play a new game on almost any computer from the last 5 or 6 years instead of, it's 2006, bought a new computer 6 months ago. I bought Oblivion. Doesn't work on my computer, have to get a new graphics card. And like with no other option. Now it's like it'll run on that computer, it won't look the best it possibly can, but it can adapt to your computer.
and a lot of computers sold today, they have graphic chips that are good enough for a lot
Hmm.
of games built into the CPU chip, right? Like my Mac Mini
Exactly.
has some ridiculous, thing in it that I never really take advantage of. That I'm sure it plays the heck out of games, but
Yeah.
yeah. So there's been a lot. That's a lot of change in the landscape, and um, that's a lot of headwinds to work against. If it was you, uh, as an avid video gamer, what would you do with
If I was,
Xbox
well, let's see. So you got the direct
if you were running it?
comparison with, the Japanese game companies, Nintendo and Sony. And they have, I think they're about the same level of sales and growth they were. 10 years ago, so it's still steady, but obviously, if you're then, you wanna see even more so than what it previously was. So they're like attention being brought away from them, but not the same level as Microsoft. So it
Mhm.
seems like, them trying to move away from the consoles or these different, services to try providing just haven't worked. So it's almost like go back just to focusing on the games and doing what you're doing before. But imagine being a company, they're like, oh, this is what we've been doing the last 6 years. Actually, that didn't work. Let's go back to doing exactly what we're doing 6 years ago. That these other companies are doing, which if you look at those other companies, like, they're doing as well as they were doing, but they're not growing a whole lot. Like, I'm almost like on the side of the um, original Xbox founder. I think they just cut their losses and maybe they continue funding the developers of these games and just to sell them on PlayStation, sell them on PC, sell them on Nintendo. Because like that was a big story is like I think it was 2020, 2021, they spent like $80 billion or something, the most money ever spent on acquiring big video game companies like the people who
Right.
make Skyrim, the people who made World of Warcraft, and all these Call of Duty and all these companies, and they just haven't really seen the results from that giant purchase. So like they're so heavily invested in it. It's like
Blizzard,
when
right?
Blizzard, yep, Blizzard and
And
Activision,
Activision,
yep.
right.
Um, so it's like they're so heavily invested in it. What do they do? Do they continue to try getting their money on that investment, or what point do they just cut their losses and focus on the thing that's making money right now, which is AI? So if I was in the position of someone working at Xbox at Microsoft, I would be looking for condos in Japan and jobs hiring at either Sony or Nintendo. Or I
I
think
see,
Nintendo might
right.
also be in Seattle. So
Now
I
there's
would
still
jump
some.
ship.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know if this is my internet or not, but let me open a door just in case, and then we'll magically slice this part right out, and it'll be like it never
Okay.
happened.
It never happened.
Maybe that will let more bits stream through. Okay, I guess we can just pick up from here. So I think I left off saying, I would jump ship if I was currently at Microsoft, and that's what I would do, and see if I get a job at Nintendo in Seattle or Sony in Japan.
There's some video game companies. There's one right here in Sarasota that's trying to build on various virtual reality platforms, I think. And of
Hmm.
course, Miami, I think, had some history in the video game industry. So in Florida, like, I think there's still business around it, but there's, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, sure will be, and, that's, like, something was, like, almost always partly of a dream of mine to work at these companies, but it seems a lot more difficult than just, like, a standard software company like I work at now. So even though, like, it could be one of those grass is greener on the other sides things, but, could be pretty fortunate I'm at a steadier place in video games now. As a gamer, I can play games and enjoy
Uh-huh.
them and maybe work on them as a hobby, but maybe not get mixed up in the drama. It almost feels similar to Hollywood in a way.
Yeah,
The movie
right.
business.
I was gonna suggest that. They're gigantic productions, and they take, well, years and years. Some of these video games have taken 5 or 7 years to
Yeah,
produce.
that's like the average now, yeah.
So that's an absurd amount of investment. Um, you know, back in the Apple II days, a guy or gal, there were some gals, could sit down and spend 3 months and have a successful game title. Now, I understand that people today have higher expectations of um, assets, the visuals and graphic design and stuff like that. And I wonder, um, and there's a lot of concern in Hollywood, right, about use of AI to get rid of all those creatives and save money and get things produced faster. And maybe there's some of that at play here in Microsoft too. Like, hey, we can cut our costs in half by just having AI do all the visuals, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
then I think, but the thing about gamers, I feel like they really, sniff that stuff out, and they're, you know, they it's hard to trick a gamer, so they see that and they just feel like they're being cheapened out. So,
yeah.
I think Microsoft or whoever, maybe not specifically to Microsoft, but these larger companies will attempt that, and I feel like it just maybe won't work out for them. But that could be an opportunity for independent, small studios of 3 to 5
Hmm.
people to be able to create something that they're able because it's less expensive to make it for them, and they might not necessarily they can make it like a retro version or something that's less like non-realistic graphics, but could put the creativity in it that really resonates with the
Right.
people buying it. And
And,
yeah,
it's not necessarily always about big flashy visuals and, Hollywood level production values, because one of the most successful games of the last 10 or maybe 15 years was with Candy Crush. Those guys were making $1 billion a year
yeah,
from frickin' Candy
or
Crush.
even
So,
even something like Minecraft, which is
yeah.
just blocks, right? So
Yeah. So
it's
don't
really you
tell
get
me you
that
gotta have, 1,000 people working on a video game.
exactly. It's really just finding the fun and getting the game mechanics and just getting that creativity and something that really resonates. That's fun to play. It's,
Yeah.
about the gameplay, right?
The gameplay. Yeah. Not, I
Yeah,
mean, you can throw all the money you want at the effects of a movie, but if it doesn't have a compelling story that touches people, um, no one's going to remember it.
absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting maybe revisit this in a year or so and see where
Yeah,
Microsoft is at. Hopefully they'll actually, maybe be thriving and back into gear, or maybe it'll just be another part of the technical graveyard. We
I
will
think it's
see.
safe to say the human desire to play will not have dissipated any.
I agree. There'll still be people wanting to play video games, and they'll, one way or another, they'll find a source for good games. So, alrighty. Well, I think that is a good opportunity to take a quick break here. Once we come back, we'll bring on Lou Franco into the podcast to talk a little bit about himself and share some of his new book. So, yeah, hang tight, and we'll go right into that. Alrighty, and on this portion of the podcast, we'll bring in our guest today, Lou Franco. Welcome, Lou. Feel free to introduce yourself, Lou, and give us some of your background.
Hi, I'm Lou Franco. I have been a professional software developer for over 30 years. Mostly my career was working in startups. I worked at 4 different startups, each with that had a successful exit into another bigger public company or something like that. And the last one I worked at was Trello, and then we were acquired by Atlassian. So I worked at Trello for 6 years, ending 2021, and for the past 5 years or so, I've been an independent software engineering, product engineering advisor and consultant, working on my own.
All right, very cool. Thank you. And we have Lou joining us today because recently Lou has published his own book on technical debt and just technology. I have my own copy right here. I'm
Oh,
working my way
nice.
through it. And
Great.
yeah, just tell us a little bit about your book and what it's about and why you decided to
Sure.
write this book.
So I have been writing on my blog for a long time, I think over 20 years. Yeah, definitely over 20 years.
Wow.
And I have written about a lot of different things, mostly related to software development. And a couple of years ago, 2023, I decided to just read through everything that I've written and is there a book there? Is there something, do I have something that I think is interesting where I might have some material to work from? And I saw that there was these two kind of themes that were interwoven but not really totally described, which is this basic idea of technical debt and this other basic idea of software developer productivity. And I started to really think about it and started to seeing, the parallels between them. And my intention was to write a 50-page pamphlet-sized book, which I started in 2024. But then I showed it to people. I got feedback. I got questions. I started doing webinars based around the material and just hearing different things and different perspectives. And then in 2024, I don't know if you know it, but there's this newsletter called The Pragmatic Engineer. It goes out to now 1 million engineers. Asked me to contribute a guest post on the topic based on what I had been doing. And so I wrote that. It was in the 7,000 word range, and it did really well. And I got tons of feedback, tons of people signed up for my email list, and it just grew and grew and grew, and it turned into a 250-page book. And generally, I tackle the topic of technical debt from an individual perspective. So you're just an engineer working in a system that might have technical debt, a team perspective dealing with so an engineering team perspective dealing with the shared ownership of a code base, and how to deal with its technical debt, and then an organizational leader perspective. So more of a CTO of a larger organization with several teams. So there's sections in the book for each of those. And yeah, so, and yeah, sorry. And so, yeah, so I wrote it, to begin with, because I had all these ideas that I just wanted to get out. And then it just kind of grew and grew based on feedback. Yeah.
Awesome. And so just to clarify, so you said that there's different sections for like different
Mm-hmm.
levels of workers. So then
Yeah.
individual engineer, team leader, CTO.
Yep.
So if, say I'm an engineer, so going through your book, would you recommend only me really paying attention and working on that one part of the book, or is there value for me
I know.
as an, and yeah, go ahead.
I definitely think that an individual engineer should read the whole book, and I'm gonna, for sure, especially if you're on a team, which I think most people would be. I mean, so the beginning section, the individual stuff is you're sitting at your computer, you're writing code, you're seeing problems right there, and we could talk about what those might be. How to deal with it in the small, like a little at a time. Not big projects, not just like small practices that if you get into these practices, you'll be making a dent in it over time. The team one is more about like bigger things where you can't just decide to do it yourself. You need to there needs to be a little bit more planning. These are things that might take months of work, right? Like instead of just an hour here and there. And so I think for those two parts would definitely be interesting to an engineer. What I tried to do with the organizational leader perspective is to help an individual engineer understand their perspective. So it's like a two-way thing. Like, why is my CTO doesn't agree with me that these are problems? How could I convince them? What are the things that they're trying to accomplish in the organization? And how could the problems I'm seeing be better communicated to them? And I also, to the CTO, am explaining how they might communicate their goals, their organizational goals in such a way that they could work together. So I definitely think they can get something out of all of the parts. And each chapter is meant as like almost a standalone technique or tip. There's a section where there's 4 chapters in a row that is more of a team process. But other than that, those 4 chapters, every chapter could be read standalone. Like you could look for something that meets your exact problem in it. In the back, there's like kind of a guide through the chapters where like, I'm having this problem. And it says like, well, look at chapter 3 and chapter 8. Like they address that problem. Yeah.
So it can almost be used as a reference even later on. You've read the book,
Yeah.
it's on your shelf. You're like, I'm writing this problem. I think Lou wrote about this in his book, and you can really just find like on the table where to, get reference for that issue. Okay, interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lou, can you tell us what technical debt is and
Yeah.
how does it impact your job as a software engineer or a software engineering manager?
Sure. So the term was coined by Ward Cunningham. He's I'm going to say famous software developer. He's most famous for creating Wiki Web, which is the basis of Wikipedia. He didn't write Wikipedia, but what he wrote was turned in, it was the basis of what people did to make Wikipedia. And he's done a lot of other things, but he's also coined the term technical debt. And here's how he described it, and I'm kind of expanding on this idea. So you're working on you have an idea for a product, you have all of your specifications, and you come up with your code design and architecture, and let's say all of those are perfectly right at that moment. And you go and do it, you start to build it from scratch, and then over time, things just change. You might find out that now that the people are using your product, that the market that you thought it was for, like there's a better market, that it would be better for them, and so you want to like pivot the product towards that market, or the world might change, right? Like so during my career, like the web was invented, mobile phones, PDAs, now AI, like things just change, and maybe you just get better ideas. And now what you're finding is as you try to move the software towards these new ideas and dealing with this new reality, you're finding that the assumptions you made in the beginning, which and a lot of people will say like technical debt is a shortcut, and I do not agree with that at all. It certainly is a way to have technical debt. It's not the only way. You could do everything right and still have technical debt because of expanding markets, expanding usage, the world changing, and now your code can't be changed because of assumptions that you made. In the beginning, it can't be changed easily to this new thing. That resistance, the resistance of the code base to be changed into what you need it to be, that's kind of what I call technical debt. And I named my book Swimming in Technical Debt, or Swimming in Tech Debt, to highlight that what I think of it as is swimming upstream. That you're trying to make progress in a code base, the water, and you're going upstream and you're just being held back. And to the outside world, they can't see this. So people who do not see the code base will not understand it, and I don't think you'll be able to explain it to them. I think it's something that's inherent that you can understand if you are dealing with the code base. You'll see the resistance, and to them it just looks like you're slow. and so that's how I think of it. But generally, I think people would say, it could be anything from messy code, not well-written code, things where you could have taken shortcuts, things that you could have just done things wrong or you didn't know how to do things, all the way to big architectural. Like I worked on a DOS program in 1992. In 1994, the web was invented. We had 90% of the market in 1992, but it was clear that the market was going to completely move to a web software, which needs to be multi-threaded, multi-user, client-server, and all those things are just things that a DOS program does not do. But without explaining it too much, like if you could imagine like an installed piece of desktop software that needed to now be serving a million people on the web, like that's
right.
not
so in a circumstance like that, I guess you have a couple of different potential strategies that you can employ, right? One would be to start over from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably a lot of resistance in organizations to doing that because you've got people in management going, well, we just invested, X million dollars in this stuff, and you say we need to throw it away and start over.
Yeah.
Right. And what are some other strategies that folks have employed?
I mean, so I just want to say from actually what you should do at the keyboard to change code, that's not what my book is about, because there are great books that do cover that. Working Effectively with Legacy Systems by Michael Feathers is the book for that, and he covers it so well. There's really not much more for me to say about it, but essentially, if you're in that book, it's more about evolving a system towards a new architecture, and the way he describes a technique called seams, 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 and what the assumption is that your code base cannot be changed easily because a lot of people depend on it. And if you do anything to it, you're going to introduce regressions, new problems into working code, and you're going to break the system as it is. And so and there's also an assumption in his book, because it's a little older, that there are no unit tests or verification suites or anything that can help you not do this. So no automated testing or unit tests or automated QA or anything. And so what he explains how to do is to introduce these seams into your code. And what they are basically are just lines of code that can turn off blocks of code that are getting in the way of testing. It's very simple. It's like, conditionals or other kinds. It's a very simple concept if you see in the book, but it's like essentially like an if statement that turns off the database access so that you could test the other part of the function in it. And then in your unit test, you just turn off that database part and then test the other part of the function that you need to test. Okay. I know I'm getting a little into the weeds here, but he covers it really well. What I would say, what I'm adding to it is, so when should you do this? And I kind of would say all the time. You should be thinking about doing this. Whenever you notice that the system is not in its ideal target architecture, if it's not in its idealized state, move it towards there a little at a time in the area you're currently changing. So like you're being asked to add a feature or fix a bug. And you go, let's say you're being asked to fix a bug and you notice that it's probably in this function that's like a 400 line function with lots of conditionals and loops and whatever and convoluted logic and no comments and you don't even understand it very well, but you're pretty sure it's in there. Like what a lot of people would do, and I have done, is like, oh, I see it. It's this whatever, off by one, fix it, commit, push. Okay. But you have just invested a lot of time into learning this function. You've just invested a lot of time into testing it. Would it be nice if you could bring it under unit test, if you could refactor it into smaller bits, if you could add some comments that explain what you just learned by looking at it? Those are the kinds of things I'm trying to convince an individual developer to do all of the time. All of the
Right.
time. Like,
So the approach is to incrementally and continuously evolve the system to keep it from keep this debt from building up to a point where it becomes, intractable, and you have to declare, software bankruptcy.
Right. That would be great. And it will happen anyway because of things that I've described. The web being invented. That's okay. There's not much you could have done about that. But not the ones where the kind of technical debt where people go, oh, they took shortcuts or they did this or the one where there's a blaming culture around it. That I think is something that you could circumvent by this incremental approach.
It sounds like a lot of it is just also just kind of learning how, as like from the developer point of view, setting up good habits that you just get in the habit of doing when you're completing like your task. So bringing back to like Jira, if I'm estimating a task, I'm like, oh, I can think of the solution pretty quickly. I just give it like estimate of like a one story point. It's kind of getting the habit. It's like, okay, let me maybe give it like I don't think 1.5 is the thing, but like a 2, and then you're kind of giving yourself that space to actually use those good habits to not build more tech debt and actually kind of improve the code base.
Yeah. I think I would also say a lot of this stuff makes it faster. I wouldn't necessarily think it's going to go over one story point. In fact, I don't think you should take it to a non-agreed upon level. I'm talking about things that are so quick that you hardly even notice them in a story point size. Like you read the code and you didn't understand it. But then you like played around with it a little, and now you understand it. So write a comment. Would you don't add a story point for that, right? Like, okay, like you're using the knowledge that you have, and you have to run the code. You just changed the code. You have to run it. You have to, right? Well, run it in a unit test. Write a unit test. Run it that way instead of like, oh, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run the application. Tap, tap, tap. Run. Get into this. Oh, go to the settings page. Oh, go over here. It's like, oh, it's wrong. Close it down. Like what I'm suggesting is faster. Like it's a unit test. Find the problem, and then at the end, of course, do a spot check with the UI, of course. But you know what it's like if you do If you don't write the unit test and you have to run it through an application and get it into the state that you have to get it into 5 times, 6 times, because you're iterating on finding the right answer and checking all the use case, all the edge cases and everything. Unit tests are faster than that. I actually don't think you need to schedule more time. I think you can, and I actually would say the amount of time you should spend on it is the amount of time that you kind of was going to spend on the thing, not like don't like 10 times the like appropriate to the action, like
Okay, that makes sense. But it's just like the nature of putting in that little extra, just a little bit even, it like builds up over time and just makes for a better, cleaner code base. And
you're making PRs. I don't like in where I worked. It was the culture to have small PRs, and so we were making PRs multiple times a week. If every one of those PRs had 2 commits in them that like slightly improved the code, that's what I'm talking about. Like, then it makes a big difference. And also, I'm going to just say, it makes people happier. Like, There's a joy aspect to it, and the feeling that we're not helpless, that we can fix the small problems that we're seeing, and that we have a culture of craft in what we do, and that and also I'm going to just say this. This is another big thing. Code reviews go faster if you do this. And so, like if you give someone a 400 a 400 line function where you changed one thing in the middle, and you don't have a unit test or a comment or anything like that, how do they know that's right? How do they know that's right? Do they have to then read the entire? I mean, if they were going to give a true code review where they're going to really sign off on whether they thought that was right, what would they have to do? Right? Think about that. Or let's say you went through the entire, before you did anything, you went through it and you refactored it all. You wrote 3-4 unit tests that all pass. You put comments in explaining each section. And then you wrote a good commit message that explained exactly the situation and the edge cases that you checked and isn't that going to code review faster? Isn't that going to not sit in the code review hopper like longer? I'm telling you, it's true.
Well, and the next time you touch that code, because you will see that code again, right? Yeah. Anything you can do to save yourself time later helps you. It's just going to help you focus on that new task, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having to reload this 400 lines into your working set.
Right. Exactly.
As soon as you said the PRs get you reviewed quicker, I immediately got put in place of the team manager seeing work come in quicker and be delivered quicker, and things getting bogged down less. So that's interesting. Just put
at Atlassian, we measured it. And we saw teams with smaller PRs, more frequent PRs, had less waiting time, and generally things went through the workflow faster, and I think this causes that. The code needs two things in a code review: to be correct, and also to be obviously correct to the person that's looking at it. And a unit test that's green, or multiple unit tests that are green, comments that explain your understanding, that help me load that function into my head. Also, you might find that you have described something wrong, and now that other person can tell you, that's actually not how that works, because you're saying how you think it works instead of it just being in your head, right? You're saying how you think it works. It's oh no, that's not what it's supposed to do. There's a misconception here, and then that correctly is being found in code review. And they might not find that with just a less than being turned to a less than greater than because it's an off by one. No, it was actually supposed to be that way. And the problem is more this, that we were supposed to check before, whatever that the real problem might be. If you've represented your understanding to the code reviewer, they can check that too.
Very cool. I'm in time being inspired to add a little bit more to my PRs now. I'm just thinking this is some stuff I could have added that, might have been appreciated by the people reviewing it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, there's one thing I was kind of wondering. So, your background is as you're a developer, you're a team leader, mostly working in and around code. What was it like doing something different, as in now instead of building a software project, your project is the book that you're writing? What's some of differences there? What were some of the challenges that you might have not expected that came from that?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the biggest problems obviously is that, when you're paid to do work, I mean, at least I do it. So without much necessarily needing motivation, whereas something like this, where you're writing a book, now I want the book to be it's meant to be a marketing piece for my consulting business. So it is something that I want to exist, that helps me find clients. But it really is. It was a year and 9 months to get it out. Not working on it every day, but that's calendar time. And up front, there was a lot of writing. I joined a writer accountability group that met 3 times a week, where we wrote together, and I got a big part of the book written in just those sessions, 3 hours a week, and that helped. so if you think about it like that, like that's I could probably get 1,500 words of first draft in 3 hours, like 500 an hour. That's approximately, so like it has, and then I think it ended up being 50,000 words. So like you can kind of do the math. So like that gets you about 40 weeks, whatever. Then you have that amount of stuff. But my intention was to only write really 10,000 words. And I thought I was going to get there in 6 weeks. and yeah, it just got. I mean, it worked out. I'm happy with where it worked out. But yeah, so but it's not and also I'm doing it by myself. So like it's not a team where you have accountability to a team and a manager and
Right, or an editor.
yeah, which I did have later.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So it's self-published, but I hired people to help me. So I hired a cover designer, editors, multiple editors of different kinds. Yeah. So the book has been professionally edited. So that's and I also had the typesetters to actually make the book, the PDF that becomes the book, and the ebook. I didn't that's kind of thing I could have done myself, but it's like it's a specialized skill. I would have to get software like InDesign software or something.
So did it feel like it was similar to working on a large software project? Or
I mean,
in what ways was it
sense,
different?
Yeah. I mean, with my software, I can verify it's correct. Right? That's a big difference. I can know it's right. Like when or to some degree, I know it's right. Whereas when you're writing the book, now I did post it. I got beta feedback. I got people's feedback, but nothing like, there's no automated test that tells you, that this sentence makes sense or this paragraph makes sense or anything like that. So it doesn't feel like as sciencey as like in science in the sense of like do an experiment and verify that it works, and but it does scratch the maker itch that I have of making things. It's definitely. I sense you're getting that with your podcast here. You're making something, but like it is different. Like it's more. I don't want to say creative. I think programming is creative, but like more the knowing whether it's good or not is a lot harder. And also, I'm not a professional. I mean, I am a professional writer in that I have been paid to write, but I'm not like I'm 30 something years of being a professional developer. I know if I'm doing it right, but I don't know if I'm doing the writing right. It's more at the hobby level.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So I think I know your answer just from our conversation, from talking about the book and good habits that you try and instill on people. But I'll still get from you if you could give one single piece of advice, from the book to the reader. What's one way they can prevent technical debt from building up? What would that one piece of advice be?
Yeah, I'm gonna say this: the book is not about AI, okay? But there is one chapter in the book to address it, because it's basically impossible to say anything about AI that will be true. Like I gotta write in this book and then it'll be true, which is what I said. But I'm gonna say this: everything I've said in this podcast that I said to do helps AI too. It helps AI to, and so don't think like AI is gonna save you from this. So the one thing I want you to know is like tell the AI to do these things for you, and it will do them. And you see it sometimes it does it on its own, but it won't do on its own without you asking. it won't probably do like refactorings that make sense, or even unit tests, unless you ask it to do those things. And I would say it can absolutely do them if you tell it to do it. So everything that I've said applies in AI programming too. And I was doing, while writing the book, I was only AI assisted programming. And I just wanted to address in the book that it's basically the rest of the book is the same. Just how you get the code in, how it changes doesn't really matter. Because I'm talking about it at a mindset level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not at a yeah.
Right.
Awesome. So this is if I'm correct, this is your second book you've written.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there so now you got this one published and released. Are you gonna take a break from the writing, or do you got any
Yeah.
other ideas going on in the head? You gonna start
Yeah.
up another book?
Well, the first book was in 2014. This one published last year, 2025. So I definitely thought I would never do it again 10 years ago. And I don't know, probably not. Um, I do think I do need to address AI more. And so I might write more of what I was thinking the pamphlets an addendum to just send out for free to
Okay.
people who bought the book. I've been going on a lot of podcasts and talking about AI and tech debt, and I've been
Alright.
collecting a lot of my ideas about that. Like in addition, like what can you do to help the AI understand how not to create tech debt, and also I think I'm trying to explain it to vibe coders, and so I'm non software developers who are trying to make software with AI, and when the kinds of things they're seeing, which is they try to make changes, but when they do those changes, it undoes another thing that was working, or it doesn't seem to be able to converge on the right answer because and I think that those things are happening because of the same problems, the tech debt problems, these resistance problems I'm talking about. I think the AI has the same issues with it that we do. And I think the same solutions kind of help, but you have to give it to the AI in some automated way that it can. I want to be able to do this in agent mode, right? Like where I don't always have to tell it what to do. So I'm trying to come up with all the things I think you should be giving to the AI so that it can judge its own code base, not just by how the program works, but also the health of the code base.
Hmm.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like there might be a second edition of the book in the
Yeah.
future sooner than a whole new topic, another book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, hey, Lou, thank you so much for, joining us and having this conversation. It's really great having you on. So for any listeners or viewers, where can they find your book? Where can they buy it?
If it's on Amazon. If you go to loufranco.com, then you'll see links there, and you could just sign up if you want to see parts of it before buying it. You can sign up for my email address. I'll immediately email you a bunch of the chapters in the book, and also a big part of the team part is this team process for managing tech debt, and a big part of that is this thing I call the 8 dimensions of tech debt. And I just send you an email once a day with each of those dimensions, so you can kind of understand all the different ways that technical debt has. Fixing it has costs and benefits, and that's what I'm describing in those 8 dimensions.
All right, very cool. We'll also make sure I have a link to Lou's book on Amazon and his website in the show notes below. And I myself is currently working through the book. I'm going through it a little slower now that I started grad school, but what I've read so far, I've really been enjoying. It's easily digestible, and you don't have to be even like a senior programmer to understand it or to get value
Yeah.
from it. I recommend it to anybody that works in or around tech.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Of
Appreciate that.
course. All right. Yeah. And then one last time, thanks so much for joining us. And we really appreciate you
Thanks. Thanks.
coming on the
Thanks.
Thanks,
My
Lou.
show.
pleasure. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for having me
Yep.
on. I appreciate
Of
it.
course. All righty. Well, that was great having Lou with us. And we'll go ahead and do the outro now. And we'll do this week's This Day in This Day in Tech History. So this should be going out on March 6th. So that will be the same day as the day that the Michelangelo computer virus would activate on computers in the early 90s. There was the big media hype about this big scary virus called the Michelangelo virus, and it would affect computers by being installed on floppy disk. And people put this floppy disk in their computers, it would get on those computers, and then as soon as it became March 6th, the virus would execute, and it would completely wreck your computer. And this was one of the first early big like scary viruses when people heard computer viruses, and the media ate it up and made it actually a way bigger deal than it actually was. But that's a lot where the antivirus companies came from. They came from that big event, and like, okay, this is an opportunity to sell our software and protect yourself from computer viruses. So for the next 10 or 15 years or so, you would open up any kind of computer and you have all these pop-ups from your antivirus software, and it actually just slowed down your computer. It kind of was the virus itself.
Yeah, so that was pre-internet, and
Yep.
that's probably what minimized its impact.
Hmm.
Certainly, there have been viruses since then that took over millions of computers. Um, but you can always count on the press to make a mountain out of a molehill.
Oh yeah, I think by doing a little research on it, I think read that it was really only like a couple thousand at most computers that were affected by it. But the way the news was covering it, it was like every computer in the world's at risk, millions of computers, and that just wasn't the case. But
Right. And
it
and they
was a
did the
good
same thing
story.
again for the year 2000 bug.
Just like that, exactly.
Yeah.
So non-technical folk who don't know better, they kind of just like this is a big scary thing, and I believe them because it's the news telling me I don't know any better. So
At
um,
the same time, these risks are real, and
sure.
uh, there are days I wake up and I feel like we've learned nothing
Mm.
about computer security.
See some of the stuff
Um,
going on with automated AI and stuff, and just letting it have full access to everything.
well, that's a whole new level of insanity,
Maybe
right?
we'll talk about that
Like,
next week, right?
yeah, but I think certainly the industry talks a lot about software security and writing software better. And, Microsoft is now going to use AI to rewrite their entire Windows code base in Rust
Hmm.
because someone there thinks that will magically make it, completely secure. Um, I, uh, I think it comes down to poor architecture at the fundamental OS operating system level
Hmm.
for these things to have ever spread like they do. Linux and Mac don't have the same level of issues as other unnamed operating systems. And there's a reason for that we don't need to go into right now. But some people have learned, some people haven't learned. Uh, as an industry, we can certainly do better.
Yeah, and that maybe that's part of me putting these little pieces of tech history in the podcast to look back and remember some of the things that didn't work as well, and we can hopefully some of us can remember and learn from them. Well, alrighty, so that's the show. Thank you so much for listening to the Thinking and Tech podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure to follow us on your podcast service of your choice and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. And if you are on our YouTube channel, make sure to leave a like on the video and a comment, just because that really helps us spread the podcast to new viewers that would be interested in listening to it. Um, yeah. So that's oh yeah, if you're let us know if you're someone who may be interested on appearing as a show as a guest. If you have something cool to show or share off, you can email us at thinkingandtechpod@gmail.com. Looking forward to seeing some of those come in. And yeah, just any views expressed in this podcast are completely of our own and do not reflect or represent the views of any past, current, or future employers. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.